Knowing the truth about mom rage, anxiety, and postpartum depression freed me. It gave me the confidence that I wasn't a victim to my own life. When I changed the way I looked at mom rage, it gave me a better picture of how to move forward and begin healing. Welcome to the Slowish Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Alexis. I'm a mama to two little girls and a parenting coach. I help moms who are burned out, tired, and stressed feel happy and confident so they can enjoy a little more ease in their daily life. If you want to unlearn parenting and awaken your innate design, then you're in the right place. Alrighty, let's get into today's episode. Hello, you guys, and welcome back to another episode. Today, we are going to be talking about mom rage, anxiety, postpartum depression, and how to know what is what. I know that most of the moms in my practice really come into it only seeing the rage or the anger that they're experiencing. And then we end up diving a little deeper, and then they'll just mention, well, at one point I was going to therapy for anxiety, or after I had my baby, I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. And this, in my eyes, and then I know, and a lot of therapists and psychologists also believe this to be true, that postpartum rage is just a symptom of anxiety or depression. And, I think in my own story, which I'll share a little bit about in a little while, this didn't make sense until several years into mom rage. And it was the missing piece. It was the link that just made sense. It just made sense. So before we get into today's episode, I want to remind you that the content that I share here is for educational purposes. This is not meant to replace a mental health specialist, a professional, therapist, counselor. The cool thing is that I get a lot of clients who are in therapy and were recommended by their therapist or their counselor, because what I do is the forward thinking. We do talk a little bit about childhood. Of course, it comes up, but that's not where we dance. That's not where we stay. And for me, I spent 9 years in the past, and I needed a guide and a blueprint forward. I needed to understand how to get unstuck in my life. And that's what coaching did for me. So what I'm going to share today is just kind of what I see in my practice, along with mostly from my story, how rage, anxiety, and postpartum depression kind of are interlinked. And that's really what the truth is that I don't see them as different entities. I don't see mom rage as the diagnosis, I guess. I see it more as a symptom. I see it as a result of feeling so overwhelmed in our own heads, in our own spiral, losing it because of anxiety, or being so stuck in freeze that we don't know how to get out. And so we get angry and primally we rage. So I'm going to keep looking back at my notes because you guys, I can so get off topic, especially with a topic like this that just feels like this is the information I wish I had at the beginning of my journey. It would have saved me a lot of time and a lot of stress and anxiety, because that's part of my story. So I'm going to take you back to when I was a little girl. So I found anxiety coming up when I was about 7, 8 years old. That's how young I remember anxiety. It just controlled my life up until very recently, maybe a year and a half ago. This doesn't mean I don't still have episodes. I do. But for the most part, I don't struggle with anxiety at all. But when I was able to look back at my childhood and see just, oh, the anxiety that I would feel, the stress, the overwhelm, what would happen is I would do that. I would feel that, and I wouldn't know what to do with the feeling because I was not a child who would express this kind of thing to my parent. And from there, at some point, I would lose it. So I would suppress and suppress and suppress and suppress until I would bomb goes off. I was a good girl. I mean, I really was. I was that girl in school that was the goody goody, you know? I did everything by the book. I was a straight A student, like I did all the things. But I get emotional talking about it. Yeah, I don't know. Processing this stuff sometimes on camera is kind of hard. Because I don't expect to process. I expect to come on here and share something with you and not to have emotion around it, but I still do. It still comes up. So anyway, I came into motherhood believing that motherhood would be the peace that would heal my anxiety. I would no longer have time to think. I would no longer have time to be in my own head because I would have a child. I believed that things were going to get better. But anxiety got the best of me. Anxiety really kicked me in the butt when my first daughter was sent to the NICU. I was so worried about her. I was worried about COVID. I mean, I was worried about everything, literally. And as she grew up, as she, began developing, I wasn't so worried about health related things with her specifically. I was more worried about developmental milestones. I was worried about behavior things. I was worried about connection. I was worried about how she would show up in the world, the human that she would grow up to be. Was I ruining her? Was I, hurting her mentally by how I was parenting? And then came expectation. So I recently just did a video about my imperfect life and how do I be happy even though life is imperfect. And I believe that the expectations that we put on ourselves is what causes us to get stuck. It's what causes us to be in this unhappy state because we are believing wholeheartedly that everybody's child is sleeping through the night at 6 months old. My kid was not. My kid was up every hour, every 40 minutes at times. It was awful. And looking back, hindsight 2020, I was completely dysregulated. My anxiety was all over the place. I had needs. My daughter had needs. I couldn't meet her needs because I didn't even know how to meet my own. So this buildup led to months, the first 8 months. I would feel so frustrated. And it wasn't until my oldest was about 8 months old. I think looking back, I know it was my first experience with rage. I was angry. I was angry with her for not sleeping. My thought, I can remember being in my daughter's room and just this feeling of rage in my chest, and I'm angry and I just want her to go to sleep because every other child who is 9 months old sleeps through the night. And that's not true. It's not true. I think if somebody had told me realistically that if I didn't sleep train my daughter, that I would be waking up frequently throughout the night at 6 months old, I think that that would have helped me to see that that was normal. But looking back, I mean, waking up every hour, 40 minutes, that's not normal. And I know what you're thinking. Okay, so what is normal? Why is waking up every hour? Why does that raise red flags for you? That makes me look inward. That doesn't make me look at my child anymore. I'm looking inward and I'm going, what is going on in here? Because my child is mirroring me. Am I avoiding my connection with my child? Because they're not giving me that connection back. It's a huge one for me. Am I anxious? Am I depressed? And is this being displayed in my child because they don't feel safe with me? I'm not this calm, ooey gooey, honey, soft, nurturing mother. Instead, I'm by the book. I'm doing all the right things. You know, when do I give in? That was how I thought of it. When do I give in and just stop this cycle? When do I just sleep train or not sleep train or whatever? When do I do that? You know, that was the point that I was at. I feel like I'm kind of getting off topic, but that's okay. Yeah, because at this point in my motherhood, my daughter was about 1. Everything triggered me. Everything. I mean, granted, now I'm on the other side. I get why. I see why. But in the moment, it was all my daughter's fault. I was blaming. I mean, it was her. She was the one to blame. So, of course, now you're like, okay, is there hope? Yes, there is absolutely hope. That's why I do what I do, because I was the mom who was exhausted. I was miserable. I was unhappy. And not every day is perfect, of course. You know, I still have stressful moments and setbacks and all of the things. But I think knowing that rage was a symptom would have given me more hope, in that if I could get a handle on the anxiety, if I could begin healing that part of me, getting to the root of the anxiety, or if in your case it's depression, I think that that would have actually maybe stopped some of the rage, because the rage felt uncontrollable. I didn't understand why it was happening. It was such a primal response. It just was a reaction. You know, it felt like, again, like everything was triggering everything, and I didn't know where to start. So, what are the most common things that I hear moms talk about being triggered? What causes mom rage? And typically I see overwhelm, lack of support, child behaviors, overstimulation, noise, and obviously this is just a condensed list, but these all, to me, these all go hand in hand with both anxiety and depression. The overwhelm for me was anxiety. Lack of support caused me anxiety, and at times kind of a depressed state. A child's behavior was this out of control, I can't control my child, what do I do feeling. Being overstimulated, like too many bright lights, baby crying for too long, which is, the other one, noise. And that is what felt like triggered rage, which that does trigger rage, right? But it also triggers anxiety. And so that's what I wish I had dove deeper into, was how do I get unstuck from fight or flight for me? I'm sure that this isn't always 100% true, but in the season where I was depressed, I've never been diagnosed with depression by my therapist, but I was definitely very closely there, if not mildly there. She just kind of was walking me through it and never labeled it. But after my daughter's diagnosis, yeah, the depression was this freeze state. I couldn't do anything. I felt tired. I felt exhausted, worn out. And then when I've been in that anxious state, it's that fight or flight. It's the, everything is danger, danger. And I really needed to unravel myself from those things, from those states. And that looked like a lot of nervous system work. It looked like a lot of inner healing. So what's the answer? Okay, that's what you're asking, right? Like I kind of hinted towards some things, but what's the answer? The answer is learning how to reconnect with your body. You need to reconnect. You need to get yourself back online so you can be aware and be involved in all the processes that go on, connecting the mind to the body to the soul. That has to happen for us to be able to begin healing. Step 2 is going to be pinpointing those triggers. I mentioned some of the triggers, but when we want to overcome rage, we've got to understand what is triggering us to have the anxiety or to go into that depressed state. And we need to backtrack. We need to bring ourselves back through the situation. And here's where we bring our body back online. So we can begin noticing the sensations, the thoughts in our body, so we can catch it sooner. So our thermometer, when we're on a 0 to a 10, let's say that we notice ourselves at a 7 for the first time. It's really hard to regulate ourselves down to a 3 or a 4, right? If we're at a 7, that's not easy. But imagine if we were at a 4 or 5. That's when we first notice the sensations going on in our body that are leading to the rage. Our symptoms of anxiety, our symptoms of depression. We're going to be able to gain control of it faster. And that's actually it's freeing and also comforting someone who struggled with anxiety. Step 3 is going to be changing the mindset. Understanding that everything is a choice. You have a choice in everything, even when it doesn't feel like it. And my example is always with the dishes. I believe for the longest time I had to do the dishes, but it was a choice. My husband could have done them when he got home from work at 11 at night, but I wanted to spend time with him. I wanted to watch our show together. And so it was a choice that I made so we could spend time together that I did the dishes. So that is a framework I learned from nonviolent communication, and I've just found that to be so, so helpful. The last thing is having empathy and self-compassion for yourself. This, I think, is the hardest part of the process. And we can only do this by taking inventory of our life and seeing our life for what it is. Sometimes we need to come out of our snow globe. We're in the snow globe and the snow's all around. And that's kind of what I do as a coach. I'm out here. And maybe we just need to recognize it and see what is all the moving parts that is causing the overwhelm, this brain spinning, just all of it. So if you're like, this sounds awesome, I want to know more. This is actually what I'm doing right now. I'm taking my first group at the time of recording this through the Rage Free Mama Blueprint. I'm not sure if I'm going to open up another group or if I'm going to just make this a self-paced course. I haven't decided yet. But if you are interested in either the self-paced course or doing a group container for the Rage Free Mama, all of these 4 steps that I just shared with you is what I teach in that. I give you a guide and a blueprint to get unstuck from rage. So you don't have to suffer from it anymore. You don't have to deal with it. You can be free. So I hope that this episode just gave you a bit of insight into rage, into anxiety, depression, and how they kind of all work together. And it also gave you hope that you don't have to be stuck in this forever. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, make sure that you give it a thumbs up if you liked this video, I guess. Yeah, and you want to see more content like this, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. As always, guys, I hope you have a good rest of your week and happy parenting.